Salutations, fellow thinkers and drinkers and the Motörhead fans. Last time we left the boys in a fairly good place, and quite a few times at the end of these videos the band's been in a bit of a pickle and left them on a cliffhanger. But after the success, well-deserved success of 1916, yeah, we left them on the up. The sun was shining on all things Motörhead. However, a pattern has started to form here ever since the four-piece lineup came to fruition. They started off strongly with Orgasmatron. They dropped the ball somewhat with rock and roll. They came back in splendid style with 1916, and now they're about to drop the ball again. And as Oscar Wilde once remarked, to lose one parent may be seen as a misfortune, but to lose both is starting to look like carelessness. So what happened? Well, there is some background, some relevant background here. This is the last album to feature Filthy Phil on. Another track is played by Mickey D, who would obviously go on to join the band for the rest of their career. But the majority of the drums were played by Tommy Aldridge on a session basis. So yeah, things not working out unfortunately with Filthy, and Lemmy let him go. Now they were still on the WTG or whatever it's called, but the Sony subsidiary, so they were still on a major label at this point, which is good. And after not only a commercial and critical success, they were nominated for a Grammy. Luckily they avoided it, but they were nominated. Yeah, I got the feeling that, I won't say delusions of grandeur. No, it wouldn't be that, would it? It would be the possibility of mainstream success, or the spectre of the possibility of mainstream success reared its ugly head, and I think turned a few heads, and eyes were taken from balls. I'm running out of metaphors here. Probably not helped by around this time, Lemmy received a phone call from a Mrs. Ozzy Osbourne if Lemmy could write some songs for Ozzy's, for her husband's next album. Lemmy's legendary reply was, "Yeah, sure, do you have a pen?" I just imagine him saying that. Knocked off 4 sets of lyrics, yeah, probably took him half an hour. And legend has it, he earned more money from those 4 songs than he ever did for the entirety of his career with Motörhead. Yeah. Amongst those 4 songs was the mega hit, the ballad Mama, I'm Coming Home. And they all featured obviously on the mega selling No More Tears album. But again, that was, he was intimately associated with this. It's another step near or towards mainstream success. And I don't know for a fact, but I do have the feeling that this, that influenced somehow the production of this record, which turned out to be a bit of a turkey, unfortunately. Again, Pete Solly handled the production duties, and having done so well on 1916, well, that's, yeah, okay, he did do very well in 1916. It's not that he did a bad job here, but I think it was, I think it was produced to be a mainstream sounding rock album, which did Motörhead no favors whatsoever. I think in hindsight, this, if I'm right in my speculation, and I mean, Lemmy indicated maybe there is some truth in this. Never heard any comments from any of the other guys. But yeah, this was a really nice sounding record. Pleasant sounding record. If you were a young kid and you were playing it in the background, your mother would not have liked it, but you'd, oh, well, yes, it's got a nice sound to it or something like that. This is not a Motörhead production. That's what I'm trying to say. It was, I think, a misguided attempt to try and be something that they are not. Now, some bands have done this. Scorpions famously did something similar, but almost a decade earlier. They'd written and recorded some fantastic music with Uli John Roth. He left, and they decided to go into a more pop rock commercial direction, which they initially pulled off, with some success. But yeah, the quality of their recorded output declined over the years quite considerably. In fact, they still always remain a fantastic live band. But and some bands can pull it off. Some bands can change direction and get away with it. Rush being an excellent example. Led Zeppelin were always continually evolving. Deep Purple went through their various phases, some more successful than others. And some bands just can't do it at all. When Kiss tried to go intelligent and record, and they did music from the Elder, thought they were Pink Floyd. Well, that died. Some bands just do not get away with it, and this is alchemy. This is voodoo. Why it works for some bands and not for other bands, you just don't know. In fact, if you go back to listen to that Kiss record, Music from the Elder, it's got a terrible reputation. But if you listen to it today, it's not that bad. It is a little pretentious, but it's not that steaming pile of shit that a lot of people would have you believe. But it didn't work. Anyway, none of which is relevant to actually what we're here to discuss, which is Motörhead's follow-up to 1916, namely March or Die. Having said all that, it starts off in a fairly decent manner, I have to say. Stand, decent opener, it's nice and fast, rocks, it's got a good, it's not a particular hook, but it's got a nice groove to it, perhaps. Yeah, it's fine. It's a decent song. This is not among their outstanding opening numbers, and thus far they've had some absolute killers, some absolute belters. This is not one of them, but it's not a bad song by any stretch of the imagination. They then follow that up with a cover of Ted Nugent's Cat Scratch Fever. Yes, I have heard the original, must have heard it at some point. It's not a song, it's not a great song, and this is not a great version. It's not a bad version, but it's not a great version. It's one of those things, if you do a cover, I think you have two possibilities. You either do a really faithful cover, or you make it your own. Kind of in the middle here. It is a faithful cover, but because it's Motörhead, it has their individual stamp on it. It plods a bit. I don't know really if it's really something they should be covering. I don't know, but they did. Okay, we move on. Bad Religion. Is there a good religion? That's a different video. It's a nice riff. Yeah, actually. One of my abiding memories, because this is probably the last Motörhead album, which I haven't heard in many years. I said, going back to the beginning, there's a few of them I hadn't heard for a long time. And this, as I already said, I regard it as not their greatest. I hadn't heard it for a long time, and seem to remember it being slightly worse than it actually is. Not all the riffs are phoned in, and this is not a phoned in riff. This is a slower song, it's heavier. It's a really snarly, aggressive vocal from Lemmy, but I really like it. Fits his lyrics, I guess, fits his meaning. It's fine. It's a good song, it's just not an outstanding song. Much the same can be said for Jack the Ripper. You'd have thought with Lemmy's ability as a lyricist and such a theme as that, they might. I'm not saying that. We're never going to record a 10-minute epic or anything like that, but this is just a bit ho-hum. It's a bit also by the numbers, by the Motörhead numbers. It's faster again. They've upped the tempo. And they've actually done something that they haven't really been known for. They've started introducing sort of tempo changes for the middle eight of the songs, or the bridge. They do that a couple of occasions on this album. which is not something they had done in the past. I mean, could point to sort of musical maturity, or maybe it's, I don't know, an attempt to get in, if they don't have any obvious hooks in their songs, maybe, I don't know. But again, it's a fine song. And so the tempo change was at least interesting. Okay, now we get into slightly sticky territory. So Ozzy returned the favour. Lemmy got paid for writing those songs, but you know, they were friends. So Ozzy guests on the next song. I ain't no nice guy, I should say. And they do a vocal duet. It's the ballad, isn't it? This is the one that the you know, the guys back at the office wearing the suits and the ties. They just, oh yes. This is going to be on MTV 24/7. You know, this is gonna break the band. Well, it didn't, and it's not because it's a particularly awful song. Trust me, you know, there are far worse efforts than this that have enjoyed commercials, considerably more commercial success and MTV airplay. Maybe Motörhead not that photogenic, you know, putting them up against, I don't know what was around in those days. Was it Poison or those sort of bands, Rat or whatever the hell they were called? You know, they all got, they made more sartorial effort, shall we say. It's all right. Again, I'm just almost, or at least I'm almost tempted to think of Mama, I'm Coming Home from the Ozzy album, which Lemmy contributed the lyrics for. But it doesn't quite get there. It really doesn't. The second half of the song gets heavier, but it is a little bit kitsch. Again, I come back to there's been some push, whether it was internal or external, that they were trying to go in a certain direction, and thank God it didn't succeed. Because I know, as we all do, the albums to come. And if this had been a success, we may not have got them. Very selfish, obviously, because, you know, the guys could have been living in Monte Carlo as tax exiles. Had things gone differently, you just don't know. But, you know, from the point of view of being a fan of the music, I'm glad this didn't take off. A bit like Whitesnake, after Slide It In. I'm sorry, no. Hugely successful, does nothing for me. And anyway, this song, I Ain't No Nice Guy, is the only track on the album, as mentioned earlier, to feature Filthy Animal Taylor on the drums, marking his last contributions to the band. He deserved a better exit. We then move on to Hellraiser, another song that featured on Ozzy's No Rest for the Wicked. What am I talking about? No More Tears album, and another set of lyrics that Lemmy provided him. Here they've done their own version of the song, and this is the only song on the album that features Mickey D on drums. It's a more stripped down version. It lacks the extraneous production that was a feature of No More Tears. So there's not the lush keyboard sounds and stuff like that, excuse me, or if they're there, they're kept down in the mix. So it's, compared to that, it sounds a bit like a demo version of the song. And having somehow gotten used to the over the years of the Ozzy version of it, and I still don't think it's a great song. It's strange hearing Lemmy sing it. Not his greatest vocal ever. And this is just, it's another one, I'm going to say it's a decent effort, but I still think it's, it's still at a attempt for a commercial appeal. And the reason I'm confident in saying that is, if it didn't have those inherent characteristics, it would not have been on No More Tears, which was the first Ozzy album, I think, which was designed by committee. They would get progressively worse after that, the Ozzy albums. But that, yeah. So yeah, Hellraiser here, not great. We move on. Asylum Choir. It's another decent riff, and this, it rocks as well. It's, after a couple of slower tracks, they're pressing on the gas again, which is nice. has real potential. There's a good musical idea here, but again, it's one of those things. Lemmy's tune or vocal melody, it's just a little bit indistinct, a little bit nondescript again. It needed a hook, not a Foreigner, Bon Jovi type hook, a Motörhead hook. It needed something in it because the fundamental song, the music, is actually, I think, rather good. It's just the tune doesn't really go far. And then we get on to Too Good to Be True. Now, if you think back to what I said about rock and roll when I reviewed it, that the best song on the album was All For You, which was the most commercial thing on there, which had it is a fundamentally well-constructed, well-written song, but it's catchy as hell. And this is very much in a similar vein, and again, this is very close to being one of the best things on the album, which is not a good sign when you're talking about a Motörhead record. It's not a ballad by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a catchy song. You could imagine it being played on the radio, and you could imagine, had they released it taking off, gaining them commercial appeal. But this was, as far as I know, not released as a single. But yes, it is the strongest song thus far. I really like it. You Better Run. This is a traditional blues-sounding song, but just done a la Motörhead. So, it obviously has its inherent charm. It's Motörhead. Slash plays on this from Guns N' Roses. The guitar solos are particularly outstanding, I have to say. In fact, there's some excellent guitar work on this record from Phil Campbell and Wurzel. I have to say, this doesn't come up to it. Yeah. Normally, if you got a guest star on it, I don't know. They do something, they push the solo up in the mix or something, or he puts in a bit of extra effort. I don't know, but it's just, and it's not a great song. It's dull. So there's some nice playing on it, some nice guitar work on it, but this is just a dull, meandering blues thing, and they insisted on playing it live. God, well, nobody's perfect. Name in Vain is back to the fast stuff, which is just your typical Motörhead fare. Not much of a tune. We've heard this construction by now many, many times. It's not bad. I mean, it's catchy enough, I suppose. But then it's also a bit innocuous. Which leaves us with a title track. Now, this is different, in all fairness. I think he must have been inspired by the title track in 1916, and how that was a real standout. Not only a standout song in its own right, but something, and now for something completely different, as John Cleese was wont to say. This they don't try to copy that in as much as it's not the old some military lament with the eerie synthesizers in the background, which was totally unique. This is think more Orgasmatron. It's got that hypnotic pounding beat. Just not quite as effective as Orgasmatron. In fact, it falls somewhere between the two, because it has a spoken word vocal. Some decent lyrics, I have to say. But it doesn't have the menace or the impact of Orgasmatron, and it certainly does not have the emotional resonance of 1916, nor is it as unique as either of them. It's a noble effort. And again, it's probably one of the strongest things on here. And it's a reasonable conclusion to what's been a fairly ordinary album. Now, quality of music has never been any indicator of commercial potential, as we all know. Some stinking turds have sold millions. But they need the record company behind them. It needs promotion. It needs airplay, especially, you got to get these things on MTV. You got to get them appearing on chat shows and all this other crap. It just didn't happen. For whatever the politics surrounding this were, I'm afraid I don't know. But Sony did fuck all to promote this. The band even took their own money to film their own video, which the record company still didn't promote. And shortly after this, Sony dropped them. So what was going on in the background, I guess we'll never actually know. Not that it really matters. It happened. Whether they decided to drop the band anyway. Normally, the record company, having invested something in you and signed you, they'd have done something to promote you, and then when they think they're not getting a return on their investments, then they drop you. But they seem to have made the decision to drop Motörhead before the album was released. Who knows, under other circumstances, what this could or could not have achieved. As I said earlier, part of me is rather glad because if Lemmy had any folie à grandeur, if he had anything like that, then I think the experience with Motörhead knocked it out of him. And what we got from here on in was absolutely authentic, kick-ass Motörhead. They didn't go down the commercial route. So what do I think of it? Well, it's up there or down there, I suppose, depending on your perspective. It's the bottom of the pile. It's fighting for last place as of now with rock and roll. I might be tempted to say that this is a minuscule improvement on rock and roll. Certainly sounds better if you like that. I mean, it's a cleaner production. Whether you think it's an appropriate production for Motörhead, it's not. It's a cleaner, but it's technically a better production, shall we say. Yeah, there's a couple of good songs on its stand. Certainly, Too Good to Be True I like, and Watch or Die. I said a couple of them, Bad Religion, Jack the Ripper, not bad. Not possibly quite as dull as rock and roll. As I said there, they've never actually made a bad album, and there's nothing you can point to here and say this is this is terrible, utter drivel or anything. It's just that it's middle of the road stuff. And normally, most albums have a weaker moment or two, but when you're talking about more than 3/4 of it, that's just how it is. Anyway, just how I see it. I'm sure some others will differ. There are some good things about it, though. I mean, as I referred to, that they've changed the tempo changes in song stuff like that. Again, whether that was outside external internal influence, I don't know, but it was something they hadn't done before, or not. Can't really recall them doing that before. But I think ultimately they were trying to be something they are not. And that's, if I was to sum it up in a sentence, I think that would be the sentence I would go for. I don't think Lemmy was comfortable doing it. And certainly the results are nothing to write home about. But there you have it. Well, that was the follow-up to the rather wonderful 1916, the slightly less wonderful Watch or Die. But yeah, the story will continue, and things, musically at least, are going to get a hell of a lot better very, very soon. So, on that note, please feel free to comment, to like, to subscribe, to share. I thank you for your indulgence. I will see you next time. Be well, and Mashonkia.